Hello everyone and welcome to the latest edition of This Racing Life. Last week it was all about York and the Dante meeting, and this week we've been up and down the country visiting a variety of people in different roles within the horse racing industry. Here's what's coming up.
You know, Brian Marston, Jason McGuire, we end up fighting like cats and dogs as well. It's not all smiles and pats on the back, I can assure you.
It was a Kempton, it was one of all other bumpers meetings of loads of favourites. They all got beat, sat in the car not wanting to go inside, and who'd you ring? So it was either Dad and he swears it, he tells you to get over it, or you'd bring Broadie and he'd listen to it and try and help and explain, and he'd bounce back and he'd always say, just keep smiling.
As a horse racing management game, basically you can manage your own string of horses from within the game. You enter them in fictitious races, you see how they do, you can train them hopefully to improve throughout the game.
Well, I need Charlie there with me because he can rattle through all the horses and everything about them, and it's all done from memory.
It was just very tough at home. Ken didn't have the horses for me. He's a very good intelligent trainer, and he had more so black type horses and rather than handicappers, which apprentices need for their careers.
Now, a job many racing fans will have heard a little bit about but not really understand is a jockey's agent. It should be simple, shouldn't it? Jockey, horse, put them together, speak to the trainer, book them for the big races, and Bob's your uncle. You go home in a blaze of glory. But speaking to Chris, who has dedicated 25 years of his life to it, it is not a career, it is a life. So unless I'm incorrect, jockey, trainer, you ran a livery yard, and then you went into becoming an agent. Talk me through the first year of becoming an agent and something you maybe hadn't considered was going to be an issue going forward. What was the job like back then?
Well, no, I hadn't. I was training. I really enjoyed training. I really did enjoy it. I wasn't unsuccessful, but I felt I wasn't making any money. And I had a young family, and it's important that I looked after them. And at the time when I was training, Carl Llewellyn and Warren Marston used to ride for me, and they knew I was sort of a bit disillusioned with it. And so they sort of suggested about being their agent. And at the time, 25 years ago, I know we're all living with agents now, but Dave Roberts, he started off doing some flat jockeys, and I think there was Norman Williamson, something had an agent. There wasn't many agents, National Hunt, even flat, I don't think really. And it just sort of, they said, why don't you give that a go? And so I sort of set out thinking I'll do this for a year or two, but I'd like to go back to training racehorses. That's what I want to be, or I'll go back farming or do something like that. But anyway, 25 years down the road, I'm still here.
We did see you in action earlier in your lion's den of a shed,
yes,
the office, and there is so much more that goes into it. What do you think we as the fans may miss a jockey's agent doing?
Good question. I think the hours, I think people just see a jockey turn up at the races and think, but there's so much work gone into that jockey arriving at the races. And I'm not talking about the jockey's viewpoint, I'm talking about our viewpoint, because the entries will come out at the 5-day stage and we'll look at them and I'll try and get a picture of where I think my lads are going to go. And then, so from sort of 5 days on, you're trying to build a picture, of where your lads are going to be. If you've got, it's grand if you've got one, you've got 2 meetings, but, when you've got 3, 4, 5 meetings, it's difficult. And so you're speaking to trainers through the week, it just doesn't happen, and then you're discussing with, you're speaking to jockeys because deciding where you think you should go, and then it rains heavily 48 hours or 72 hours before, and the ground changes, and then all your plans go out the window. So it is just 24/7. It is, yeah.
It's been 24/7 for 25 years,
yes.
and you've been through a fair few milestones in the time as well, not least for the fact when you started, it was a racing post in front of you and a phone next to you, maybe attached to a wall. The digital age came in though, and you had to adapt to that.
When I first started, I actually think it wasn't even, was it the Racing Post? I think it could have been Sporting Life at the time. I don't know,
There
but
we are.
anyway. And then the Racing Post come in, you went, ooh, what's this? But it's our Bible, it's everything. The Racing Post, to me, was, I did all my work. And then used to sort of ring the trainers. But then I did have a mobile phone, but trainers didn't, you know, the older generation of trainers never carried mobile phones. And everyone now does a business on a mobile phone. But we didn't have mobile, so that was always difficult. So would there be an answer machine? Might not be. So you could try one trainer 5 or 6 times to try and get him. And then as you progressed, you worked out what was a good time to catch that trainer when he might be in the office. So you always I always used to early doors write down 9:15 or 10 to 9. So that's when you'd get him come in for breakfast, and he probably didn't want to speak to me anyway, because he wanted his breakfast, and he was more worried about speaking to the vet or finding out that the girl was all right after she'd had a fall or whatever. But no, but then, I just pressed a button, as you saw earlier, to book a jockey. Before, I used to have to ring Weatherby's, the old jocks, I think they were called at Weatherby's, and hopefully someone would pick the phone up, and you would just book a jockey on the phone, and then when you saw, like when at 10 o'clock the deadline came, I might not get through till 10:30, and if I hadn't got any of my trainers beforehand that my jockeys were due to ride for, I wouldn't know until they verbally told me when that horse was declared. And the only other way to find out then was on CFAX or teletext or something like that, wasn't it? You used to get the runners up on it, and so that's what it was. And so it's easy. It's easy now. But when they initially said they were going to not do old jocks and there was no one to speak and they were going to put this laptop or computer in front of me, I was, do we have to do that? What's wrong with this system? Oh, imagine going back to that. It'd be woeful.
I'm sure inevitably plenty of people will ask you for a career highlight, something that made you the most proud. Does anything spring to mind?
It's quite difficult. I mean, Sam Twiston-Davies, I've worked alongside Carla Welling for so long, and I suppose seeing him as a little snotty little lad running with Willie at the yard and turn into what he's turned into gives me immense pleasure, and yeah, big pleasure. But it's hard really because, seeing the likes of Timmy Murphy, Noel Feely, Wayne Hutchinson, they were young lads when I started doing them. So to see all their careers progress makes me very happy. And it's not just about the money. It makes me emotionally happy to see my lads doing well. And it's never been, of course, we've all need to have a living and something or other, but it's just seeing them. And, I did Jim Cullity. Jim Cullity came over from Ireland and he was an amateur at the time, and someone said, I think it was Adrian Maguire, said, there's a lad come over to Henrietta Knights, or I'm not even sure whether he was there then, and said, an amateur, you should maybe take him on. 3 Gold Cups on Best Mate. I got him on spare for Nigel Twiston-Davies in the Grand National, Bindery. Well, how much pleasure can you get out of that? Of course it is. It's non-stop. And Noel Feely, who's been part of my family for a long time, seeing his highs and lows, he's had quite a lot of injuries and stuff like that. Jason Maguire struggled with his weight, great rider, brilliant rider. But there's a few of them that it's not always been, we've fought, Warren Marston, Jason Maguire, we end up fighting like cats and dogs as well. It's not all smiles and pats on the back, I can assure you, but we come out the other end and it's, they're still part of our family.
Can I put Lorcan forward for Graham? He's ridden for Graham.
Yes, I think that'd be a good shout, and he's, as I said, he'll take the 3 off.
Yeah.
I think hopefully he'll go with that. So.
Yeah.
What's the main thing you're going to miss from being an agent?
Seeing the lads that I've got go on and riding winners. My whole sort of business is always, for the top lads, is always graft away on a Monday to get the best rides on a Saturday. That's always been my focus. Saturdays, prize money, big races, TV races, that's always been what I aim for. Yes, you've got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you know, but the Saturdays and the Sundays, the big races, Cheltenham Festival, Aintree, all the big races, that's what I've always set out for, and I've been really lucky. I'm not the best agent in the world. I've never said that, but what I do is I bring other things to the table, but I do set out for my lads to be on the best horses at the weekend. I try to have them on the best horses all week, but you know, that's where they want to be. They want to be at Cheltenham, they want to be at Newbury, they want to be at Ascot, they want to be riding those graded races. And so I must get them there. So actually when it misses, and you know, Gordy's very lucky, he's taken over a very good, strong business. And so when I see some of my lads ride a big winner, I'll probably regret that I'm not doing it myself. It's hard to break the cycle of giving up, but I need to. Not just for my own sanity and my family and stuff. No pressure. I have no pressure from anybody, but I just feel it's the right time. And
just finally, do you look back on your 25 years in the sport with an immense amount of fondness? Do you think you could have found the kinds of highs and lows in any other sport or in any other walk of life?
No, without a doubt. It's been... I was born and bred to be a farmer, you know, farming. And, you know, we keep sheep, and, you know, Jane's got a pedigree flock of sheep, and I love all that. We've probably increased the flock, and now we've got a bit more time. But there's nothing that has given me the buzz that has been... I thought being a trainer but this being an agent is fantastic. Yes, it's long hours, but I'll miss that. But it is... Anybody, I would tell anybody to go into racing. It's been so good to me from 18 years of age. Brilliant. And I've touched a bit of everything. I had a transport business, I've had a livery business, you know, so I've been, and I loved it all the way through. Why not? What's not to like?
A very happy retirement to Chris Broad after 25 years of service as a jockey's agent. He's looked after some huge names, notably Sam Twiston-Davies from the age of 16. The partnership goes way back to when Sam was taking his first steps as a jockey and has gone right the way through to big race successes, including at this year's Punchestown Festival with Clan des Obeaux.
It's Clan des Obeaux in the lead from Album Photo. As they come to the final fence, it's Clan des Obeaux from Album Photo, who's trying very hard on the outside, but it's Clan des Obeaux from Album Photo. Running up to the finish, it's Clan des Obeaux, who's winning a third Ladbrokes Punchestown Gold Cup for Paul Nicholls, ridden by Sam Twiston-Davies.
Sam, we're fresh off the Punchestown Gold Cup, and Clan des Obeaux, one for the Brits, so to speak, at Punchestown. Just talk us through that race. Was it always the plan to make all?
Yeah, Paul had, we'd had a good chat before, and obviously with Harry Cobden and such, and how Aintree went and why it was so good. So he was always quite keen, and the fact he had the option of going for the Bet 365 over 3.6, he felt obviously he would stay that kind of trip, so it was to go forward, be very positive. He felt he was very well in himself, and he was spot on, went and was good and forward everywhere, and didn't stop galloping, thankfully. And a little birdie tells us that you weren't actually supposed to be at Punchestown that week. Where were you supposed to be? Yeah, well, it's quite funny. It's an up and down season. So I said to Blink, there's a great guy who works around here. I said, Blink, I want to come to work for you for the week. And he said, right, okay, so I was going to go to Cirencester with Blink and do some decking, almost check in at a certain time and check out, just almost to like remember why like we're so lucky to actually get up in the morning and go racing and do what we do. And it turns out we got sacked when I rang Blink to tell him I actually had needed Wednesday off to go and ride in the Punchestown Gold Cup, but luckily the flame was reignited by that almost.
12 years ago, you took your first steps as a jockey. You had agent Chris Broad by your side, and 12 years on, and 25 years of service from him, he's now hanging up his boots. That must be quite emotional.
He promised me he'd see me out as well, so maybe I should call it quits. But I'd love to know how many times we'd spoken in that our length of time together, because at the end of the day, I'd speak to Dad every day, and there'd be days where maybe like we wouldn't talk, but nearly call Broadie and Jane a part of the family, because the amount we spoke and the depth we spoke about different things, not just racing. And why Broadie was so good is he saw me through times where I wouldn't have wanted to go in to have dinner with my mum, because he'd be too nervous about her seeing me in certain states. So you would ring Broadie, he'd somehow, I don't know how, would put a smile back on your face. And I can remember days like there was a Kempton, it was one of the all-weather bumpers meetings with loads of favourites, they all got beat, sat in the car not wanting to go inside, and who'd you ring? So it was either Dad and he swears it and tells you get over it, or you ring Broadie and he'd listen to it and try and help and explain, and you'd bounce back and he'd always say just keep smiling. So to lose that is incredibly hard, really, actually thinking about it, because like when you say it, like literally what he means to our team is he was a huge cog for us here, and we'll miss him very much for that reason alone. But as a jockey in my own right, I'm very selfish, I love him to stay. What's been his biggest asset as an agent? What does he have that sets him apart from other people that you may have encountered over your years as a jockey? It's probably unfair to say, but he's always, just the whole way through, he's been as honest as he can. When any trainer rings, there has never been a, yeah, he can ride your horse, when half of him's knowing that might be going to the other meeting. He will always tell exactly as it is. If you're booked for somewhere, but somebody wants you at another meeting, he'll say, look, he's on this currently, leave it with me, I'll try and find it if I can switch him. So he's always very good at being honest, which has always done us really well throughout. And I think it was just his pure love, dedication to it. The fact, I'm sure he told you about the time he goes and gets his paper in the morning, and the fact then he'd ring you at any time and explain why maybe you're riding that or what's happening in this situation. And it's just an amazing man, and I'm sure one we'll miss, but I do hope he'll still be coming in to pop in to help Gordy. Now, in the simplest terms, you play horse racing in real life. Racing is your life, but you also do it virtually as well. You're a fan of Starter's Orders? Oh yeah. We were all, I think that's actually when Ryan Hatch first came to work for us years ago here. Willie invited him up for a game of Starter's Orders, so it's literally how all the relationships are started between what are now great friends. But we had a lot of fun, landed a lot of gambles, and trained a lot of big winners. I will admit, not many of them were jumping; most of them were on the flat. But yeah, we do enjoy it, and look forward to seeing what's happening in the future. So there you have it. Starter's Orders has the seal of approval from people within the racing industry. If you haven't heard of it, it's a video game available on the PC and the Mac, where you can be your own racing trainer and take on the difficult world of horse racing. I'm going to be channeling my inner hold-up jockey, looking around. There they are, and off I go. We're about to turn into the 3 furlong straight at Ascot. This might be a little bit tricky. Unfortunately, this seems to be going like a lot of my punting, just so nearly, but yet so far. The winner's in sight, but it looks like I'm going to come a little bit too late. God, this race riding thing is a lot harder than I was anticipating. So I finished 5th in the end, and if you think you can have a better go, you can catch this on Starter's Orders 6 and 7, and I'm here at Mark Loveday's house, here in Stockport, to find out a little bit more about a game that is sweeping horse racing.
Starter's Orders is a horse racing management sim with the emphasis on the simulation rather than the game, which means it's possibly going to be quite tricky to get into, because there's a lot of terminology and horse racing related stuff to understand to get over the first hurdle, so to speak. But as a horse racing management game, basically you can manage your own string of horses from within the game. You enter them in fictitious races, you see how they do, You can train them hopefully to improve throughout the game, and you can also breed different horses. You can breed from a pool of stallions in the game, and generally you progress as a real racehorse trainer and owner may do in real life, but it's on your screen. It's a single player game, and it's basically on your PC.
Jockeys, trainers, owners, they love starters orders. The likes of George Baker and Sam Twiston-Davies, who we went to see, they're both keen players. Did that surprise you at all?
It did surprise me to begin with, but then you get a slow drip feed of jockeys maybe, or trainers tweeting about the game, and you realise at that point that people in the industry are playing the game. And then maybe if there were a couple of occasions I was at an event on a race course and people come up to you in the industry and say, I'll play a game. So that's nice, yeah. And it's good to hear, because that really is, the game is all about realism. It's that's the primary aim of the game, to be a realistic simulation of not just racing, but it kind of allows somebody to pretend they own and race and train a racehorse without obviously needing the cash to do that, as you do in real life. Yeah.
And so in terms of the next version, it's not necessarily going to be Starters Orders 8, but Starters Orders available on a smartphone and tablet.
Yeah, at the moment there's a version of Starters Orders in development specifically aimed at the mobile devices, because it's never been available on Android. There's been versions available on iOS, but they've been direct ports of the PC games, so they've kind of been a bit unfriendly in terms of the user interface. So yeah, the aim is just to get a nice mobile experience out there for horse racing fans, but make it a little bit more accessible for people who are maybe on the periphery of horse racing.
Next up, we meet a trainer who numerically has the most winners in the history of UK racing. Mark Johnston, along with son Charlie and wife Deirdre, are responsible for over 70 winners so far since the turn of the calendar year, and counting. It doesn't look like things are going to be stopping anytime soon ahead of the big festivals in the summer. Johnston Racing has been a name on people's lips for quite a few years now. Charlie, his involvement, your wife Deirdre as well. Does it make the success even more, the fact that you do it alongside your family?
Yeah, there's an argument maybe it should have been Johnston Racing a good bit earlier, because Deirdre's been involved right from the very, very start. It was Mark Johnston Racing Limited for maybe 20 odd years. I can't remember when we changed. We tried to sort of sneak it in without anybody noticing, and we did to some extent. But it's quite important that it is that way, yes, because it's a family business, and if it wasn't a family business, I think there would have been times when I would have been concerned about the future of British racing and wondering how long I want to stay in it. But we've been committed for quite some time that it's going to be a long-term affair, and that Charlie will take over.
Well, talk to me about the role of Charlie, the evolving role of Charlie in the business over the years. How is he the yin to your yang? What does he do that perhaps you don't like to do, or perhaps weren't great at doing before he came along?
I'm not sure what he does that I wasn't great at doing before he came along. There's an awful lot he does that that I maybe didn't particularly enjoy doing beforehand, that he's taken off my hands and made life an awful lot easier for me. I think probably the biggest difference is age and temperament. That he just has such a tremendous memory for it. We've got wonderful systems here that keep me in touch with all the horses and the farm and everything. Charlie hardly needs them. He can stand there and watch 100 horses go past, recognise them all, reel off where they ran last, where they're running next, their pedigrees, everything about them. And it's something I don't know whether I struggle with it because of age or because I just rely on him now. I joke, I think my father used to wind me up with a lot of times. He'd say, why have a dog and bark yourself? And I think that he does it so well that I now just have come to rely on him for that. And when racing managers come for Angus Gold for Sheikh Hamdan, or John O'Mills for Sheikh Hamdan bin Mohammed, I need Charlie there with me because he can rattle through all the horses and everything about them, and it's all done from memory.
To change tack slightly, has his involvement in the business allowed you to pursue other things outside of racing, notably something like flying, for example?
No, not really. Flying has come into it, and we've had an aeroplane since 2003, I think it was. So getting an aeroplane was actually sounded like a terrible extravagance. It's one of the best business decisions we ever made because it was life-changing. Flying it myself, yes, I've become pretty hooked on that and I really enjoy it, but flying's all for business. It's all going racing. A little bit like the car was before that the Inland Revenue find it hard to believe when you say to them, I don't go on a journey that there isn't a horse at the end of. I remember it used to annoy me that they wouldn't accept that my car was 100% business. I said, well, I don't go anywhere else. And in that sense, nothing has changed. It's an aeroplane now, but it's still going racing.
The Goodwood and Royal Ascot spreadsheet, I find that fascinating. When exactly do they start to get filled up? And I'm guessing there would be massive amendments and plans changing everything. But when would
changing all the time, yes. But the Ascot spreadsheet's already been produced, and so it's just so that and we only do it for those 2 meetings. And I've often wondered why we don't do it for York. It's probably a mistake that we don't do it for York, because we do it for Ascot, and it's just to keep the mind on the job of what horses have got that in their programme. Because otherwise, I'm a huge believer in making hay while the sun shines. I think if you sit on a horse waiting for a certain race, it's fine obviously for the Group 1 races and the classics and so on. Of course, you're focused entirely on them. But in the day-to-day running, if you bypass one opportunity waiting for another, it's sod's law. Something goes wrong and you miss the second opportunity. So. It was pretty important for Ascot and Goodwood to just have in the back of your mind the horses that you're aiming to take there.
And finally this week, we catch up with one of Mark's stable apprentices, Andrew Breslin.
I went to Racing Academy in Ireland, and that was a great foundation for my career. I then got put on work placement with Ken Condon. I learned tons with Ken. He was very good to me. Taught me lots, riding work with the likes of Shane Foley and Niall McCullough, Billy Lee. It was great, but it was just very tough at home. Ken didn't have the horses for me. He's a very intelligent trainer, and he had more so black type horses and rather than handicappers, which apprentices need for their careers. I then came over to Mr. Johnston's yard, spent 4 weeks here, had a quick chat with him, and he gave me a couple of rides, and he agreed that he would be happy to take me over.
It's an amazing opportunity to be an apprentice. It's such a huge yard, a plethora of horses, a plethora of handicappers, as you say, that really would need your valuable £5 taken off. Do you have to pinch yourself sometimes?
Absolutely, like you say, I'm very lucky to be part of such a successful stable, and you do. You have to pinch yourself sometimes and think, wow, it's amazing to be part of such a successful team. I ride some lovely horses every day, and Mark's been very good to me. Charlie and Deirdre as well, I have to thank them a lot.
And as you've earmarked, you're very lucky to be in a yard that affords you such chances. What do you think are the main benefits that you would be able to have that other apprentices might struggle for?
I think Mr. Johnston trains a lot of lovely horses, good horses, and that's the lucky part about it. When there's 5-6 meetings on it in a day, you could be lucky enough to pick up spare rides and lovely big handicaps as well. And you need a good yard behind you like this to be successful, I think.
What are your short-term goals?
I would like to lose my £5 claim. I've only got 7 more winners, so hopefully by the end of this year I will get through that and just keep riding to the best of my ability, keep learning, and just ride as many winners as I can and keep the boss happy.
So that's it for the latest edition of This Racing Life. Next week, Niall Hannity will be back in Middleham. He'll be visiting owners and trainers who are up and coming within the area. But for now, thank you for watching, and we'll see you again soon.